The stars looked different today. Jack Wilson noticed it first. Standing on the roof of the United Earth Defense Force headquarters, he watched as the tiny dots of light were blocked by something massive. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. Then the alert started blaring. "Commander Wilson, report to the command center immediately." The voice over the speaker system was calm, but Jack knew better. This was the voice they used when they didn't want to cause panic. Jack ran down the stairs, his heart pounding in his chest. By the time he reached the command center, the room was filled with officers staring at the main screen. Lieutenant Susan Miller stood near the front, her face pale in the blue light of the monitors. "What are we looking at?" Jack asked, moving to stand beside her. "We don't know," Susan replied. "They appeared 30 minutes ago. 7 vessels, each one bigger than anything we've ever built. They're just sitting there. The ships on the screen were unlike anything Jack had seen before. They weren't the sleek, pointed vessels of science fiction. These were massive structures that seemed to bend the light around them, with surfaces that shifted colors like oil on water. "Have they made contact?" Jack asked. General Howard, the highest-ranking officer in the room, stepped forward. "Yes, 2 minutes ago. They requested to speak with Earth's representatives. The President has selected you and Lieutenant Miller to make first contact." Jack turned to look at the general, surprise clear on his face. "Us? Why?" "Because you wrote the protocol for this exact situation," the general said. "And because they asked for you by name." That sent a chill down Jack's spine. How did they know who he was? Within an hour, Jack and Susan were aboard a small shuttle heading toward the largest of the alien vessels. Neither spoke much during the journey. What could they say? This was the moment humanity had both hoped for and feared since they first looked up at the stars. The shuttle docked with the alien ship without any input from the pilot. It was as if the ship had simply reached out and pulled them in. When the doors opened, Jack and Susan stepped into a corridor that seemed to be made of living metal. The walls pulsed with soft light and the air smelled like nothing they had experienced before. Not bad, just alien. They were met by a creature that stood nearly 8 feet tall. Its body was covered in what looked like blue-green scales, and it had 4 arms that ended in hands with 7 fingers each. Its face was oddly familiar. 2 eyes, a nose-like protrusion, and a mouth. But the proportions were all wrong, as if someone had described a human face to an artist who had never seen one. "I am High Counselor Vorzath of the Zelnar Federation," the creature said in perfect English. There was no visible translation device. "You are Commander Jack Wilson and Lieutenant Susan Miller of Earth." Jack stepped forward, remembering the protocol he had written years ago. "On behalf of humanity, we welcome you to Earth and extend our hands in friendship." He actually extended his hand, then realized the gesture might mean nothing to the alien. To his surprise, Vorzath reached out with one of its lower arms and took Jack's hand. The touch was cool and dry. "We have been observing your world for some time, Commander. We find it fascinating." The way the alien said fascinating made Susan uncomfortable. It was the way a scientist might describe an unusual specimen. "Would like to understand more about why you've come," Susan said, finding her voice. "Of course," Vorzath replied. "The Zelnar Federation is a community of 17 advanced species. We explore the galaxy seeking other intelligent life. When we find it, we evaluate its potential for membership in our community." "And you're here to evaluate us?" Jack asked. "We have already begun the evaluation," Vorzath said. "Your species has shown remarkable progress in a short time, from primitive agriculture to space exploration in less than 10,000 years. It is unusual." The alien led them into a vast chamber where dozens of other aliens moved about. Some looked somewhat like Vorzath, while others were completely different. Floating clouds of light, creatures with too many limbs to count, beings that seemed to phase in and out of reality. At the center of the chamber was a holographic display of Earth, rotating slowly. Around it were streams of data, flowing too fast for Jack to read. "This is our assessment center," Vorzath explained. "We have been analyzing your species, your technology, your potential." "And what have you found?" Susan asked. Vorzath made a gesture with its upper arms that might have been their equivalent of a shrug. "The preliminary assessment is not favorable. Your biology is inefficient. You require too much oxygen, too much food, too much sleep. Your technology is primitive. You have barely begun to harness the atom, let alone the forces that truly shape the universe. And your history? The alien paused. You fight wars over resources, over ideas, over invisible lines on your planet's surface. This is concerning. Jack felt a flash of anger. With all due respect, we've made great progress. In the last century, global warfare has decreased significantly and— Yes, Forzath interrupted. We have noted this. It is why we are here now, rather than simply passing your world by. You show potential, but potential is not achievement. The alien touched the holographic display, and the image changed to show a complex graph with a line that rose and fell before ending at a small number, 12%. This is our calculation of your species' survival probability, a mere 12% chance of successfully transitioning to a Type 2 civilization. The challenges you face, environmental, degradation, resource depletion, social unrest, they may prove too great. Susan stepped forward, her scientific mind already analyzing what she was seeing. What does this mean for us? For Earth? It means, Forzath said, that we will give you a chance to prove our assessment wrong. The Federation Council has granted Earth 20 years to demonstrate that you can overcome these challenges. We will leave behind monitoring stations and a small diplomatic presence. If at the end of that time you have shown sufficient progress, we will welcome Earth into the Federation. If not— The alien didn't finish the sentence. As Jack and Susan were escorted back to their shuttle, they passed a group of aliens studying a display of human history. Jack caught a glimpse of world wars, nuclear tests, and climate disasters. They've already decided, Susan whispered. They don't think we'll make it. Back on Earth, news of the aliens' assessment spread quickly. Many humans were outraged at being judged by outsiders. Others fell into despair, believing the Zelnar's prediction of humanity's likely failure. But in a small laboratory in Michigan, Dr. Alan Carter listened to the broadcast with a different reaction. As the news anchor repeated the alien's grim assessment, a 12% chance of survival, the quantum physicist simply smiled. What are you grinning about? His colleague asked. They basically said we're doomed. Carter turned away from the screen, his eyes bright with something that looked almost like excitement. They've made a fundamental error, he told his research team. They've assessed our technology, our biology, our resources, but they've completely misunderstood human creativity and determination. He stood up and walked to the whiteboard where complex equations covered every inch of space. And that, he said, picking up a marker, is exactly the advantage we need. 5 years passed since the Zelnar arrived. The world had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Nations that had been enemies for generations now worked together. Resources once used for weapons were redirected to science and space exploration. Humanity had united with a single purpose: to prove the aliens wrong. Dr. Alan Carter hadn't left his laboratory for more than a few hours at a time since that first day. His team had grown from 12 scientists to over 200, all working on what they now called the Carter Protocol. The laboratory, once a small building on the edge of the Michigan University campus, now spread across several acres with security that rivaled the White House. Today was special. After 5 years of work, they were ready for the first major test. Are you nervous? Asked Dr. Rita Johnson, Alan's closest colleague and friend. She handed him a cup of coffee as they watched technicians prepare the test chamber. Terrified, Alan admitted with a small smile. But also excited. If this works, it will work, Rita said firmly. The simulations were perfect. The test chamber contained what looked like a small spacecraft, barely large enough for one person. Its design was unlike any vehicle ever built on Earth. Instead of the usual metal shell, this craft was made of a material that seemed to shift and change as you looked at it, a bit like the Zelnar ships, but with a distinctly human touch. Captain Lisa Rodriguez waited beside the craft, dressed in a special suit designed for the test. She had been selected from thousands of volunteers, her record as a test pilot making her the perfect candidate for this historic moment. "The Zelnar observers have arrived," Rita said, nodding toward the viewing area where 3 alien figures stood watching. Alan nodded. "Good. I want them to see this." He stepped to the microphone that would broadcast to both the test chamber and the observation rooms. "Good morning, everyone. Today we test the first human-built quantum entanglement propulsion system. The Zelnar have told us this technology is theoretically impossible for humans to harness for at least another century." He paused, looking directly at the alien observers. They were wrong. In the test chamber, Lisa climbed into the small craft. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands were steady as she activated the systems. The craft hummed to life. Lights blinking across the control panel. "All systems online," Lisa reported, ready to begin test sequence. "Proceed, Captain," Alan said. Lisa took a deep breath and pressed the activation sequence. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the air around the craft began to shimmer, like heat rising from hot pavement. The craft itself appeared to blur, becoming less solid somehow. In the observation room, the Zelnar representatives moved closer to the glass, their alien expressions unreadable, but their body language showing clear surprise. "Phase 1 complete," Lisa's voice came through the speakers, sounding strange and distant. "Beginning Phase 2. She pressed another sequence of controls. This time, the effect was dramatic. The craft didn't move, not in the normal sense. Instead, it seemed to fold in on itself, disappearing from one spot and instantly appearing 10 meters to the left. "It works," Rita whispered, gripping Alan's arm tightly. The craft continued to jump around the test chamber, each movement instant and precise. It wasn't flying in the traditional sense. It was manipulating space itself, using quantum entanglement principles to fold reality around it. After 15 minutes of successful testing, Lisa brought the craft back to its starting position and powered down the systems. When she emerged, the entire facility erupted in cheers and applause. The Zelnar observers did not cheer. Instead, they huddled together, speaking rapidly in their own language before hurrying from the room. "They're worried," Alan said with satisfaction. "Good." Meanwhile, in another facility 3,000 miles away, Dr. William Harris was making his own breakthrough. Unlike Alan's team, William wasn't working on space travel or energy systems. His focus was much more personal. William's daughter Olivia had been born with a rare genetic disorder that made her bones brittle and her lungs weak. Doctors had given her 20 years to live at most. William, a brilliant geneticist, had dedicated his life to finding a cure. "How are you feeling today?" William asked as he entered Olivia's hospital room. At 15, she was small for her age, her body fragile, but her spirit strong. "Same as yesterday," Olivia said with a smile. "When can I try the new treatment?" William sat on the edge of her bed. "That's why I'm here. The ethics committee has approved it. We can start tomorrow." Olivia's eyes lit up. "Really? You think it will work?" "I know it will," William said, though the truth was more complicated. The treatment he had developed was revolutionary, using modified genes from extremophil bacteria found in the deepest parts of the ocean, combined with techniques borrowed from the limited genetic information the Zelnar had shared. In theory, it would not only cure Olivia's condition, but make her stronger than a normal human. What William hadn't told the ethics committee was that he had already tested the treatment on himself. For the past 6 months, he had been monitoring the changes in his own body: increased bone density, improved lung function, and most surprisingly, the ability to tolerate environments that would be lethal to most humans. The following day, as Olivia received her first treatment, William met with representatives from the United Earth Defense Force. "Your work has implications beyond medical treatment," said General Howard, the same man who had sent Jack Wilson to meet the Zelnar 5 years earlier. "If humans could survive in environments previously considered lethal, we could colonize worlds the Zelnar thought impossible for us," William finished. "I know. That's partly why I developed it." The general nodded. "Dr. Carter's propulsion system and your genetic adaptations could change everything." The Zelnar gave us 20 years to prove ourselves worthy. At this rate, we'll do it in 10. Across the globe, similar breakthroughs were happening. In Brazil, engineers developed new materials stronger than anything previously known. In Kenya, scientists created advanced farming techniques that could work on Mars. In Japan, artificial intelligence systems were integrated with human neural networks in ways the Zelnar had deemed culturally impossible for humans. The Carter Protocol, as all these efforts became known, wasn't just about technology. It represented a new philosophy, using alien skepticism as fuel for innovation. On the Zelnar mothership still orbiting Earth, High Counselor Vorzath received reports of these developments with increasing concern. This is not following the expected pattern, Vorzath told the Federation Council during their monthly update. Humans are advancing at 3 times the rate our models predicted. They're taking our assessment not as a warning, but as a challenge. Is this concerning? Asked another council member. Vorzath stared at the latest report showing Captain Rodriguez's successful test flight. I'm not certain, the alien admitted. But for the first time in my 500 cycles of evaluating emerging species, I find myself questioning our methods. We may have made a miscalculation with humanity. Back on Earth, as Alan Carter finally allowed himself a full night's sleep for the first time in years, he dreamed of stars, not as distant points of light, but as places within humanity's reach. In his sleep, he smiled. The Zelnar had expected humanity to follow the same developmental path as other species, only to fail along the way. What they hadn't counted on was humanity's greatest strength, the ability to forge entirely new paths when the old ones proved too limiting. 10 years had passed since the Zelnar ships first appeared in Earth's skies. The world had changed so much that it was barely recognizable. Humanity had established colonies on Mars, Europa, and Titan. The Moon now hosted a research center larger than any city on Earth, where scientists from every nation worked together. At the heart of the Lunar Research Facility, Dr. Nancy Chen stared at the holographic display floating in front of her. For 3 years, she had been studying the historical records the Zelnar had shared as part of their educational materials. At first, the aliens had seemed generous in offering this knowledge. Now Nancy understood it had been a calculated move. They had shared only what they thought humans could comprehend, information that would guide Earth along a predictable path of development. "Have you found something?" asked Frank Dawson, an engineer who had been working with Nancy since the beginning of the project. He handed her a cup of coffee, a luxury on the Moon. "I think so," Nancy said, sipping the coffee gratefully. "Look at this pattern. Every single advanced species in the Federation followed almost identical technological paths. There are variations, of course, but the fundamental steps are the same." Frank studied the display. It showed 17 different technological timelines, one for each Federation species. Despite their different biologies and home planets, they had all developed similar solutions to similar problems. "That can't be a coincidence," he said. "It's not," Nancy agreed. "I think the Federation has been subtly guiding developing species for thousands of years. They say they're just observing, but they're actually pushing everyone along the same path they followed." "Why would they do that?" Nancy zoomed in on one particular section of data. "Because it's safe. Because it's predictable. And because they've never imagined there might be other paths." Maria Garcia, the third member of their team, joined them. She had been monitoring the Zelnar observation post on the far side of the Moon. "They're getting nervous," she reported. "Their communications back to the mothership have increased by 300% in the last month." "Good," Nancy said with a smile. "That means we're on the right track." For the past year, the team had been developing a new approach to energy generation, one that didn't follow the standard evolutionary path of technology the Zelnar expected. They called it the Chen field, and it worked on principles that weren't found in any of the alien records. "Are we ready for a full test?" Frank asked. Nancy nodded. "The simulations are all positive. The only way to know for sure is to try it." They moved to the testing chamber, a massive room carved from the lunar rock and reinforced with the strongest materials humanity had developed. In the center sat a device no larger than a microwave oven. It didn't look impressive, but if it worked, it would change everything. Beginning test sequence, Maria announced, her fingers flying over the control panel. Power levels at 10% and rising. The device hummed softly as energy flowed into it. Unlike traditional power sources, the Chen field didn't generate energy. It created it through what the team called dimensional folding, pulling power from what seemed to be nowhere. 20%, 30%. As the power levels rose, a field of soft blue light appeared around the device, expanding slowly to fill the chamber. "This is where the simulations failed," Frank said quietly. Nancy held her breath. This was the moment of truth. Either they had discovered something revolutionary, or they were about to fail spectacularly. 50%, 60, 70. The blue field continued to expand, but instead of the expected failure, it stabilized, pulsing gently like a living thing. "Power output is impossible," Maria whispered, staring at the readings. "It's generating 10 times the input energy." Nancy laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Not impossible, just unexpected." Unknown to the team, their test had not gone unnoticed. The Zelnar observation post had detected the unusual energy signature and immediately reported to the mothership. Within hours, a special envoy was dispatched to the moon. The humans were still celebrating their success when the Zelnar delegation arrived. Led by Subdirector Krelvax, a senior member of the Federation Science Council, the aliens requested an immediate demonstration of the Chen field. "We have been monitoring your progress," Krelvax said, its voice betraying what might have been concern. "Your development is not following predicted patterns." "We're aware," Nancy replied calmly. The demonstration was arranged in a larger facility. This time, the device was connected to a small vessel similar to the one Captain Rodriguez had tested 5 years earlier, but more advanced. As the Chen field activated, powering the ship with its impossible energy, Krelvax and the other Zelnar observers grew visibly agitated. Their skin colors shifted rapidly, a sign of strong emotion in their species. After the demonstration ended successfully, Krelvax approached Nancy with a question that revealed volumes about the Federation's thinking. "How did you conceive of a solution that exists outside the established pathways of technological evolution?" Nancy's answer was equally simple. "Because no one told us we couldn't." The Zelnar envoy departed quickly, obviously disturbed by what they had witnessed. As soon as they were gone, Nancy received a call from Earth. It was Jack Wilson, now Admiral Wilson, head of the United Earth Defense Force. "Dr. Chen, congratulations on your breakthrough," he said, his face serious despite the positive words. "But we have a situation. The Zelnar mothership is showing signs of preparing to leave orbit. We think your demonstration spooked them." "Is that a problem?" Nancy asked. "Weren't they scheduled to leave in 10 years anyway?" "The problem," Jack explained, "is that they're recalling all their observation posts and diplomatic personnel. We're concerned they might be planning to cut ties completely, or worse." Nancy exchanged worried glances with Frank and Maria. They had wanted to surprise the Zelnar, not scare them away. "There's more," Jack continued. "We've detected communications between the mothership and what appears to be a larger fleet beyond our solar system. They're using encryption we can't break, but the frequency of messages suggests they're concerned about something." "Us," Nancy said. "They're concerned about us." Jack nodded grimly. "It's time to implement the final phase of the Carter Protocol. How quickly can you adapt your technology for larger applications?" "How large are we talking?" Frank asked. "Planetary defense systems," Jack replied. "And ships. A lot of ships." After the call ended, the three scientists stood in silence for a moment, letting the implications sink in. They had set out to prove humanity could exceed the Zelnar's expectations. Now they faced the possibility that their success might have created a new problem. "Do you think they see us as a threat?" Maria asked quietly. Nancy thought about the question for a moment. "I think they see us as something they don't understand, and that might be more frightening to them than any threat." Back on the Zelnar mothership, High Counselor Vorzath reviewed Krelvax's report with growing unease. In 20,000 cycles of evaluating emerging species, Nothing like this had ever happened. Humans weren't just advancing faster than predicted. They were developing technologies that shouldn't even be possible, according to the Federation's understanding of developmental patterns. Perhaps, an aide suggested carefully, we should reconsider the evaluation timeline. Vorzath stared at the image of Earth rotating below them. Perhaps, the High Counselor agreed, we should reconsider everything we thought we knew about humanity. The next 6 months were the busiest in human history. While the Zelnar mothership remained in orbit, their observation posts and diplomatic teams had all withdrawn. The silence from the aliens was concerning, but it also gave humanity time to prepare. Admiral Jack Wilson stood on the bridge of the UES Determination, the flagship of humanity's newly created space fleet. Through the massive viewport, he could see dozens of other vessels in formation around the moon. They were smaller than the Zelnar's massive cruisers, but sleeker, and if their tests were accurate, far more maneuverable. "Final ship reporting ready, Admiral," said Susan Miller, now a captain and his second in command. "The fleet is complete." Jack nodded, feeling a strange mix of pride and concern. "I never thought we'd build all this in secret." The fleet had been constructed in shipyards hidden throughout the solar system. Using the quantum entanglement principles developed by Dr. Carter and powered by Dr. Chen's revolutionary energy systems, each ship could travel faster and fight harder than anything humanity had previously imagined. The ships incorporated Dr. Harris's genetic adaptations too, with life support systems that could sustain crews in conditions once thought impossible for humans. "What do we call it?" Susan asked, looking out at the assembled vessels. There were 53 in total, each representing a significant investment of resources and hope. Jack thought for a moment. "Defiance," he said finally. "Not as a threat to the Zelnar, but as a statement. We refuse to accept the limitations they placed on us." The name was transmitted to all ships, and within hours, it appeared on the hulls of every vessel. The Defiance fleet was born. As the final preparations were being made, the sensors detected movement from the Zelnar mothership. After months of silence, it was changing position, moving closer to Earth. "They're scanning us," Susan reported, watching the data stream across her console. "They've detected the fleet." "Good," Jack said. "It's time we showed them exactly what humanity is capable of." He opened a channel to the Zelnar ship. "This is Admiral Wilson of the United Earth Defense Force. We request a meeting with High Counselor Vorzath." There was a long pause before the response came. "This is High Counselor Vorzath. We have observed your military buildup with concern. Explain." "Your intentions." "No hostile intent," Jack replied smoothly. "We would like to invite you to observe a demonstration of our fleet's capabilities. Consider it part of our evaluation." Another pause. "Very well. We will send a delegation to your vessel in 6 hours." When the communication ended, Susan turned to Jack with raised eyebrows. "A demonstration? Is that wise?" "They've been watching us for 10 years, Jack said. "It's time we gave them something to really see." The Zelnar delegation arrived precisely on time. High Counselor Vorzath was accompanied by representatives from several other Federation species, creatures so different from humans that Jack had to remind himself not to stare. They were escorted to the observation deck, where they could watch the fleet maneuvers. "Before we begin," Jack said, addressing Vorzath, "I want to be clear that this is not a show of aggression. We have built this fleet because we believe in being prepared for any situation." "Including conflict with the Federation?" Vorzath asked, its voice neutral. "Including defending ourselves if necessary?" Jack replied evenly. "But we prefer cooperation." He signaled for the demonstration to begin. What followed left even the humans breathless. The Defiance fleet moved in perfect synchronization, ships appearing to teleport short distances using their quantum drives, performing maneuvers that would have torn apart any conventional vessel. They demonstrated defensive capabilities, energy shields that could absorb incredible amounts of damage. They showed how the Chen field could be used not just for power, but as a weapon capable of disrupting the fabric of space itself. Throughout the Demonstration. The Zelnar delegation remained silent, their alien expressions unreadable, but Jack noticed that several of them were recording everything with small devices they held in their many-fingered hands. When the demonstration concluded, Vorzath turned to Jack. These vessels can perform maneuvers our own ships cannot match. They utilize energy systems we do not fully comprehend. How is this possible in just 10 years? Jack smiled slightly. When you first came to Earth, you told us we had a 12% chance of success, that we would likely fail to make the transition to a Type 2 civilization. You meant it as a warning, but humanity took it as a challenge. The Admiral gestured toward the fleet. This is our response to that challenge. We didn't follow the path you expected because we found better paths. Vorzath conferred briefly with the other aliens in their own language before responding. Admiral Wilson, I must return to our ship and contact the Federation Council immediately. This changes things. After the delegation departed, Susan approached Jack. Do you think we scared them or impressed them? Probably both, Jack admitted. Either way, I think the evaluation period is about to end early. He was right. 3 days. Later, the Zelnar mothership was joined by 3 even larger vessels that appeared suddenly at the edge of the solar system. The new arrivals dwarfed anything humans had ever seen, making the original mothership look small by comparison. A message was broadcast to Earth and all human colonies. High Counselor Vorzath and the representatives of all 17 Federation species request a formal meeting with Earth's leadership. The location, neutral space between Earth and Luna. The purpose, to deliver the Federation's evaluation verdict. The meeting was arranged for the following day. A special platform was constructed in space, with Earth and the Moon as its backdrop. Human leaders from all nations gathered, along with the scientists and military personnel who had been key to the Carter Protocol. High Counselor Vorzath arrived with representatives from all 17 Federation species. Their verdict was unexpected. Humanity's evaluation period would be terminated early, not because we had failed, but because we had rendered their assessment metrics obsolete. In 20,000 cycles of Federation history, Vorzath announced, to the assembled humans, no species has forced us to reconsider our fundamental understanding of developmental potential. You have not merely exceeded our expectations, you have shattered the very framework we used to create those expectations. Dr. Alan Carter, standing among the Earth delegation, couldn't help but smile. This was exactly what he had hoped for when he first heard the Zelnar's grim assessment 10 years ago. The Federation Council has voted unanimously, Vorzath continued. Earth is invited to join the Zelnar Federation, not as a junior member as originally intended, but as a full partner. With immediate effect, there was a moment of stunned silence before the human delegation erupted in cheers and applause. Even Jack Wilson, usually so controlled, allowed himself a broad smile. As the formal proceedings continued, Dr. Nancy Chen found herself standing next to Subdirector Krelvax, the scientist who had asked her that revealing question months ago. Have a question for you now, Nancy said quietly. Why did the Federation really come to Earth? Was it just to evaluate us? Krelvax's multifaceted eyes seemed to study her for a moment. The truth? The Federation has been stagnant for millennia. We have grown comfortable, predictable. Many of us hoped that new species might bring new ideas. The alien made a gesture. That might have been their equivalent of a shrug. None ever did until you. Nancy thought about this. So humanity isn't joining the Federation. The Federation is joining humanity. The alien scientist made a sound that might have been laughter. Perhaps we are joining each other, and perhaps that is exactly what we all need. 100 years had passed since the Zelnar first arrived in Earth's orbit. What began as a fearful moment in human history had transformed into the greatest period of growth and discovery the species had ever known. Admiral Paul Stevens, great-grandson of Jack Wilson, stood on the observation deck of the Earth Embassy on Zelnar Prime, the capital world of the Federation. The sprawling city below was alive with members of all 18 Federation species, living and working together in a harmony that would have seemed impossible a century ago. Humans had spread throughout the galaxy, establishing colonies on hundreds of worlds. They had not simply joined the Federation, they had transformed it. Human scientists collaborated with alien counterparts, reimagining technologies that had stagnated for millennia. Human philosophers challenged ethical frameworks that had gone unquestioned for generations. Human artists introduced concepts of creativity that sparked cultural renaissances across a dozen worlds. Today was special, the 100th anniversary of First Contact. Representatives from all Federation planets had gathered on Zelnar Prime to celebrate. At the center of it all was a monument, a holographic display showing Earth as it had appeared a century ago, with the original Zelnar mothership in orbit. "Quite a view, isn't it?" said a familiar voice. Paul turned to see High Counselor Vorzath approaching. The alien was old now, its once vibrant scales faded to a pale blue-green. Vorzath was one of the few original Contact team members still alive, having extended its natural lifespan through medical techniques developed in cooperation with human doctors. "It's beautiful," Paul agreed, gesturing at the city below. "Hard to believe there was ever a time when our species didn't know each other. Harder still to believe there was a time when we thought humanity would fail," Vorzath said, moving to stand beside Paul at the railing. They watched in comfortable silence as the sun set over the capital. Lights began to appear across the city, creating patterns that would have seemed random to human eyes a century ago, but now felt as familiar as the lights of New York or Tokyo. "Something has been on my mind lately," Paul said after a while. "The original assessment, the 12% chance of success. Was that real, or was it a test?" Vorzath's multifaceted eyes crinkled at the edges, a gesture humans had learned was equivalent to a smile. "It was both. The calculation was accurate based on our understanding at the time, but we had been using the same metrics for 20,000 cycles, evaluating species after species. Most failed. Some succeeded, but only by following expected paths. And then there was humanity," Paul said. "And then there was humanity," Vorzath agreed. "Your Dr. Chen was right, you know. The Federation had become stagnant, comfortable. We had forgotten what it meant to truly innovate." Paul thought about the changes the last century had brought. The Chen field was now standard technology throughout the galaxy. Quantum entanglement drives powered everything from massive colony ships to personal transporters. Dr. Harris's genetic adaptations had evolved into an entire field of study, allowing all Federation species to improve their natural abilities and lifespans. "Did you ever truly believe we would fail?" Paul asked. Vorzath's eyes seemed to smile again. "With absolute certainty. And I have never been happier to be wrong." The Admiral laughed. "That's the greatest human gift to the galaxy, you know, not our technology or our adaptability." "What then?" asked the alien diplomat. "The permission to be wrong, and to be better because of it." As they spoke, a small ship approached the embassy, drawing both their attention. It was an unusual design, a blend of human and Zelnar aesthetics, but with something new mixed in. It landed gracefully on the platform adjacent to the observation deck. From it emerged Olivia Harris, granddaughter of Dr. William Harris. At 105 years old, she looked no more than 30, thanks to her grandfather's genetic work. Beside her was Krelvax, the former sub-director who had been so concerned by Nancy Chen's discovery a century earlier. The two headed the Joint Research Initiative, the most prestigious scientific organization in the Federation. Admiral Stevens, High Counselor. Olivia greeted them with a warm smile. "I hope we're not interrupting." "Not at all," Paul replied. "We were just discussing the past. How goes the future?" Krelvax's skin rippled with colors, a sign of excitement the humans had learned to recognize. "We believe we have made a breakthrough in dimensional transit, using principles from both the Chen field and traditional Zelnar physics. We may have found a way to access parallel realities." "Parallel realities?" Vorzath's voice betrayed surprise. "Such things were deemed theoretically impossible by our scientists for millennia," Olivia laughed. That's exactly what the Zelnar said about quantum entanglement propulsion 100 years ago. We've learned not to let impossible stop us. As the sun finally set, the city was illuminated by thousands of lights in celebration of the anniversary. Ships from all 18 Federation species performed aerial displays. Music from a dozen worlds blended into a harmony that would have sounded chaotic a century ago, but now made perfect sense to everyone present. In the center of the main plaza, a new monument was unveiled. It showed two figures standing side by side, Commander Jack Wilson and High Counselor Vorzath as they had appeared at that first meeting. Between them was a small holographic display showing the number 12%, a reminder of what had once seemed inevitable. On a small plaque beneath the monument were words that had become something of a motto for the new Federation. The future is not predicted, it is created. Back on the observation deck, Paul, Vorzath, Olivia, and Krelvax raised glasses in a toast. The liquid inside glowed with a soft blue light, a beverage created by blending human and Zelnar cuisines. To the next 100 years, Paul said, and to whatever impossibilities will make possible, Olivia added. Vorzath's gaze moved from the celebration below to the stars above. When we first arrived at Earth, we thought we were there to judge whether humanity deserved to join us. We never considered that perhaps we needed humanity more than humanity needed us. Krelvax made the gesture that humans had learned meant agreement. The greatest miscalculation in Federation history turned out to be our greatest fortune. As the celebration continued below, news arrived from one of the joint human-Zelnar research outposts in a distant part of the galaxy. They had detected signals from what appeared to be another emerging intelligent species. The Federation Council would soon need to decide how to approach them. What do you think? Vorzath asked Paul. Should we tell them they have only a 12% chance of success? Paul smiled and looked out at the galaxy spread before them, filled with possibilities no one could have predicted a century ago. I think we should tell them the truth, that the future is theirs to create, and that we'll be there to welcome them when they're ready, no matter what path they choose. In the distance, a new star appeared to brighten suddenly. Not a natural phenomenon, but the result of a Chen field generator coming online around a previously uninhabitable planet, making it suitable for life. Another impossibility made possible. The prediction of humanity's defeat had been based on the assumption that we would try to develop along the same path as other species, only to fall short. What the Zelnar hadn't considered was that humans would forge an entirely new path, one that would ultimately reshape the galaxy itself. And somewhere, on a distant world not yet known to the Federation, another young species looked up at the stars and wondered what might be possible.